Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to Office Hours FM, episode number 56. I am your host, Carrie Dills, and today I'm joined by Andy Adams. How you doing, Andy?
I'm great, thank you.
It is very nice to meet you via Google Hangout.
Yeah, same.
In this very intimate format.
Internet meeting.
Well, we've got a great show on tap today. A lot of cool stuff that Andy and I would like to talk about, and he has to share with you guys. I would like to thank our sponsors for this episode, ManageWP.com, which is where you can go to manage all of your WordPress sites in one handy location. They've also got a really cool, if you go to ManageWP.org, they've got a cool tool that you can use to find new plugins and see up and comings. So check that out. And also we have got Desktop Server, and we are anxiously awaiting the release of 4.0. I don't know when that, I have no insider information on that. But anyways, do check out their website. They finally opened up an affiliate program, and those guys, well, I haven't even told you what Desktop Server does, but Desktop Server is pretty much amazing for local development. Those might have been the worst sponsor reads ever. I'm freewheeling it over here.
I love both of the sponsors are really awesome. I've loved what ManageWP is doing with the plugin search. It's something that I was going to do myself if I hadn't found them. So
nice.
Awesome work there. And I need to try out the development server software because I just checked it out today and I was like, wow, that is the biggest problem that I have in developing WordPress sites.
We're going to talk about all of that and more coming up. For anyone tuning in, you can participate and ask us questions by sending a tweet to Office Hours FM or by just tagging it with the hashtag OfficeFM. And Ben, I already see your question. In fact, I'm not hiding from my neighbor, and I'm not using their Wi-Fi. I'm actually sitting in a recording booth out on the West Coast. So yes, it is kind of like a little bunker out here. And Andy, where are you broadcasting from today?
I'm in northern Idaho, Coeur d'Alene specifically.
Idaho? No, Idaho. I'm sure.
Yeah, I know it's surprising a programmer in Idaho, but there's a few of us up here.
I'm sure you've not heard that one ever before. Okay, so Andy, for folks that haven't had the pleasure of meeting you or just being introduced to you, give us the scoop. Who is Andy Adams? What do you do?
I am a developer, and I've been freelancing for about 2.5 years and developing professionally for 5 or 6. And I sort of fell into WordPress by chance when I started working with the Theme Foundry about 4 years ago. And I eventually went solo, have done freelancing for a while, been through many ups and downs and painful moments. Nearly quit a couple of times. And now business is going good, and I've started writing about it, trying to share all the stuff that I've learned over the last couple of years in the WordPress space and just freelancing in general. And then recently, I started to focus my business on making WordPress faster. It's just like, it was this secret joy that was hiding there all along. And every time that I did WordPress performance work, it was like so much fun. And then I was trying to figure out where am I going to go with my business? And it just hit me all at once. And here I am specializing.
And you call your business Certainly Software. Is there what's the story behind that name?
Not much story. It's just a lot better than my original business name, which was Over the Barn, which was given because my business was founded while I lived in the loft over my parents' barn, and I didn't have any idea what the heck I was doing. And then like 1.5 years later, I still didn't know what the heck I was doing, but like I knew I had to have software in the name, right? Or something, a better hint. So it might change in the future. We'll find out.
You know what? I think that would be a fun icebreaker question sometime, maybe to WordCamp or something. But, I've heard icebreaker questions like, what was your first car? And everybody pulls out these horror stories of their clunkers that they used to drive. And but maybe what was your first business name? And then we can all be embarrassed in front of each other for the things that we've called our businesses. Mine was Imagination Sites.
Not
That was like circa 1998. Woo. So I love that you share. If anybody hasn't checked it out, go to Andy's blog over at andyadams.org. So much, you just give away a ton of really helpful information, because the journey of freelancing, it's hard. It's hard kind of figuring out what to do and how to do things. And I love that you give some really great practical advice over there. And
thank you. You know, it's there was many stages in my freelancing career where it was like my nerves got the best of me, and like I was just scared that I couldn't keep this going and stuff like that. And if you're an experienced freelancer reading what I'm writing, you're probably like, this is way too basic, you know, like I already know all this stuff. But realistically, I think a lot of people sink or swim in the first 18 months. And my goal is to help those people see the light at the end of the tunnel. And if you're in the shoes that I was in, where you didn't know what to charge, or, you know, why are my clients, you know, asking for more stuff than, you know, originally scoped. The goal is just to help you get past those hurdles and then into like a full-time freelancing role, because freelancing is awesome. Like I mean, there's so many huge benefits to it. It just family life, for one. I mean, the stability that it provides your family, like with time, you know, the amount of time that you can spend with them. Working for yourself is just great for so many reasons. So I really believe in that. And so that's why I'm sharing all this stuff.
Awesome. The question, it fell out of my head. I don't, it's probably on the floor somewhere around here. So I'm going to leave that and we'll come back to it in a little while. But if anybody has things they want to throw out there for Andy related to freelancing, he would be a great person to ask. Yeah, and I still can't even think of the question. So we're just going to move on and then circle back around. So going on to, oh, I know what it was. God, I'm sorry, I'm just my brain's on the fritz today. Sorry, Andy. You got me on a weird day. I could actually be weird every day, but extra weird today. Okay, so with Certainly Software, you are doing website speed optimization for clients. How are you generating leads? Are you cold calling people saying, hey, your website, I could definitely make some improvements on that speed, or is it referrals, or tell me?
Right now, it's mostly referrals still. And my secret is that I'm not actually doing exclusively speed work. It's, you know, it's everything that comes in still, but I've chosen to specialize on my website because that's the kind of work I want to do in the future. And I've done it in the past, and now it's just time to like go full bore with it. So my strategies going forward are, I'm going to try a few different things. I'm going to write about performance, WordPress performance, especially as it relates to somebody who's making money with WordPress, like a business. I am going to do some cold pitching to people who are running businesses on WordPress that I can, you know, all the tools are available to find out how slow their site is. And I can make a pretty solid pitch, I think, to say that if I can speed your site up by like 3 seconds per page, and that will generate 3% more sales. So I'm going to go that route. And I'm also thinking about, this is something that one client has asked, doing a sort of white label service for agencies who are doing e-commerce sites, because it makes sense for everybody. It's a win-win-win. Like, I'll charge a certain amount, they can mark it up, the agency can mark it up as much as they want, and then the client gets a faster site and more sales. I feel like that's an ironclad pitch. I don't know how it won't work, but I'll write about it. I'll let everyone know.
Cool. Yeah, white labeling doesn't always work, like in the case of maybe a designer that, you know, then they almost kind of don't get credit for the work if it's white labeled. Maybe that's not a good example, but it sounds like in that situation, it's not like you have well, maybe yours would be, I guess, more case studies than a portfolio sites that you've worked on. So yeah, I think that sounds, I look forward to seeing your write-up on it.
Yeah, I'll let you know how the cold calling, cold emailing goes because I'm not experienced at it at all. So it'll be a first.
Interesting. Well, and two, you could even give away some value in that initial email. Give them something that they could do to go ahead and implement immediately, speed up their site. So even if so you're already creating value in that contact.
Exactly. I
It's
mean,
part of your sales pitch, I guess.
yeah, you can, with things like speed, it's so measurable that you can say, like, here's where you're at. I can guarantee that you're going to be this much faster, basically. I mean, there's no WordPress site that I don't think I could shave 25% off of their load times. And the results from that are also pretty well measured. Like there's been a lot of, I don't know if they're super scientific, but there's been a lot of studies on the effect that speed has on conversions and stuff. And so I can say, I can guarantee a result from this. And that's where the white labeling can be most effective on like kind of a concrete compartmentalized service like this. Like a design is not so easily compartmentalized and like sold as a one-off thing. It's like a kind of a custom thing that has to be done based on the customer and their brand and all that stuff. So, but a speed up, everybody can use one, and there's no like front end to it or anything like that. So almost everyone can benefit from it, which is where I think a white labeling type thing would work,
We got a good question from Cheryl. She's asking, is there anything ego-wise, like you're Andy Adams isn't getting credit for a job well done? Does that bother you at all?
No, not. I mean, ultimately, as long as I'm getting paid for my work, I'm not too concerned about it. I will, I want to build a portfolio, but that I can do that with other clients. Ultimately, a white labeling type deal would just be to grow the revenues and expand the business.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, we've got some people want to know about the speed. The vendor's asking, what's the main cause of a slow WordPress site? Any insights, or do you see like a repeat offender time and time again?
That would depend on the type of site. So a static businessy website or a blog, the obvious, most common mistake people do is don't use caching or use it ineffectively. One of the more interesting problems that you see pretty much all the time, just because of how WordPress is, are N+1 queries, where I don't know if it would work to share my screen.
I think you can.
Let me try this.
This is going to be a first. We've never had a screen share on the podcast.
Let's see here. So this is my text editor here. Let's see. Can you see what I'm typing?
I can. If you could make it like a little command plus and yeah.
Yes, awesomeness. Okay, so N+1 queries, if you're not familiar with it, is where you do one query to get a whole bunch of stuff. So like, I don't know, we're gonna get the comments for this post, and there's arguments here. And then you go through and you're looping through all of these comments, and you get the comment meta for each one. So like one that I saw recently is this comment featured? And then, let's see, it's like comment ID. It's probably going to be wrong, but you'll get the idea.
Yeah.
And so then you do something with this value here. If this comment is featured, you show like a star by it. But the problem is when you have 100 comments on a page, you're looping through each one and you're running another query for each of these. And in fact, the plugin I'm dealing with right now is like, it's actually from, it's on CSS Tricks. And every comment, you're running 2 queries for each one in addition to the one. So here's your one query, and then here's your n query. That's why it's n plus 1, n being the number of things you're iterating over. And this crushes WordPress performance. And it's a common problem because there's so many, you can just think of how many ways that this can happen. You get posts up here. You get categories, and you loop through each one, and you get some information about each category. And so all of a sudden, on a page with 100 comments, you have 201 queries being run, which is like crazy loads on the database. And if they stack up, then it just blows everything up. So I see that. I've seen that on almost every WordPress site that I've worked on, because it's so handy. Like, you get the comment meta right here with this function, but what you really need to do is get all of this meta information with a query up above. So am I making any sense with that?
No, that makes total sense. And I guess that brings up a couple of questions. One, if let's say I'm just installing a plugin and I'm doing my due diligence to the best of my knowledge, this is a good, decent plugin. And then it's got stuff like that in it. How do you avoid, I guess, bad code? So assuming that you're not the one writing it.
Well, So I guess when you're choosing a plugin, the performance issues of it will become evident later. Like, the first thing to do is get the right one going. And you won't even see performance issues until you start getting lots and lots of comments in this case, or lots and lots of categories and tags. And maybe it's not even going to be an issue. So like, performance is something that you'll deal with later. And then if you find it on a plugin that you're using that does everything you want, oh boy, you're going to have to be comfortable with your development chops to make the changes to it. And you really want to do it on the lowest hanging fruit first. So
that's great advice.
Yeah. Performance,
the easiest to fix.
Exactly. Yeah. Most of the time you can get huge performance gains with just a couple of tweaks on the site. So, I mean, solving the n plus 1 queries problem, what I tend to do is, let me share this screen again really quick. What I tend to do is, this is usually done in a function somewhere. And so what I'll do is I'll create my own plugin, copy paste the code from this function, and then remove action for the old function. And then I'll add my own function to overwrite that functionality, basically, and do it a faster way. So you just unhook the old stuff and you add in basically the same stuff but modified to be faster. And that's what I found to be the least intrusive way of fixing slow plugins when you encounter them.
Okay, so you can still, that plugin is still useful or has some use. You can just remove the part you don't need, like you said, and then add in your function that's a little more streamlined.
Exactly. And I mean, obviously at that point, then you can commit a patch to the plugin itself, which I plan on doing with this particular one. Push an update.
Question then, when you see stuff like this, is that lazy programming or is that didn't know better programming?
Definitely not lazy. And
just because it's the quickest way to get something done.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're writing code, you have to just get it working first. And then, they may not even realize that this is going to become a performance problem down the line. And I mean, solving this, unfortunately with WordPress, solving this particular type of problem isn't the easiest. Like, you have to do some sort of custom query to grab all the information you need before you go through and loop through and grab everything, do all of the stuff you want to do with the comments. So it's not particularly easy to solve, so I don't blame people for not trying to solve it. Other frameworks have done better jobs, I would say, at making it easy to avoid the problem. So maybe that's something we could look forward to in WordPress in the future, is ways to basically eager load up all the stuff that we need before we have to loop through and grab all the meta information or whatever it is, extra information.
Interesting. So what's your weapon of choice when you're doing this analysis, say on queries? Are you using something like Query Monitor, or is there a better tool?
Yeah, I use most of the time like Debug Bar with the queries extension. I can't even remember what it's called, is enough. I mean, to be honest, the majority of WordPress sites have such like a glaringly obvious performance problem, if they have one, that all you have to do is open up Debug Bar, turn on the Query Monitor, and it's like 827 queries on this page. Like, oh, okay, here we go. Like, let's dig in here. It's really, so it's just for the starting point, you know.
Fair enough. Well, we've got a question. Oh, where did it go? I lost it. We're getting great feedback. People love the live tutorial, so thank you for throwing that out there. I did want to. I'm going to shift gears slightly, and we can circle back around. But I'm doing some giveaways today because who doesn't like giveaways? And I wanted to go ahead and announce some winners, some winner chicken dinners. First, I want to thank the people who gave me stuff to give away, because that's awesome. One is Gravity Styles. I had Russell Aaron on the show a couple of episodes back, and he was talking about his plugin that it lays over Gravity Forms, and then you can choose really cool styles. It's nifty. And then GiveWP.com. Andy, have you seen that in the news?
I can't say that I recall it.
It's a new plugin that's out, and it's a way to basically run donations or accept donations on your site. And what's interesting about it, and I haven't read enough to make any educated comments, but it was a fork of Easy Digital Downloads and then modified to be specific to accepting donations. But then I saw maybe last week that EDD rolled out a donations add-on. So I'm not sure what else is going on there. But really appreciate Matt Cromwell over at GiveWP giving us some add-ons for free. So the plugin itself is free, and then there's add-ons, and that's what's being given away. So thank you, Matt, for that. Yeah, because that was a definite gap. I've tried doing, like for nonprofit sites, doing donation and fundraising stuff, and that was a royal pain in the tooth because there wasn't a good solution out there.
Same here, actually. I've had that exact problem because you don't want to use like the generic PayPal experience. Most of the time it's not too great. And then trying to add Stripe is just another bigger pain than it needs to be. So that's awesome.
Dealing with PayPal, it makes me want to cuss. It's all their developer documentation is so awful. Oh, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We also are giving away 2 sets of extensions from Shop Plugins. The guy behind that is Daniel Espinoza. He is a really cool guy. I've had him on the show. Oh, I don't even remember. It was quite a few episodes ago. But he does additional add-ons for both WooCommerce and Easy Digital Downloads. So you could be the lucky winner chicken dinner of that. And then let's see, we have. Sorry for the random awkward silence there. Oh, and then we have Surefire Web Services, who is John Perez, and he does writes a lot of educational content around the Genesis framework. And he's got a course for creating a Genesis child theme from scratch using his Sandbox starter theme. So that will be cool. So I'm not going to announce the winners yet. I just wanted to tease and say what it was that we were giving away. So going back to some questions, what role, and this is from Jackie, what role does hosting play in SiteSpeed?
What role does posting?
Oh, hosting, sorry.
Hosting. Oh, like super major, important role, so much so that the majority of sites, if they just upgraded to like a managed WordPress host, would probably see their performance problems, their major ones, disappear. I got kudos from somebody for how fast the site that I built loaded, in which I did no performance work at all. It was just hosted on DreamPress, and it was just super quick because they do really good with their server work. So any client who's having issues and they're like, oh yeah, I'm on this $3 a month shared hosting plan. Well, that's the first order of business is I can't save you if you're on that type of a host.
Is it a combination of their actual server setup and then any, whether or not they choose to use caching on their end, or is it, what is it other than, shared host and just a ton of people on the same server that makes a managed host? I'm just kind of being devil's advocate because I love managed hosts. I use them, but I also use some regular shared hosting plans, and
so
like a super caching plugin or something.
And that will work for the majority of people. And the standard static WordPress site isn't going to benefit from like in-depth performance analysis or even necessarily from a managed host. I mean, if your pages are not changing often and you don't have a lot of activity, whether it be comments or people purchasing or reading restricted materials or stuff like that, then you're not going to have major performance issues and everything's going to be static, and it's almost as if you have an HTML site. So a caching plugin will do it. And, in those cases, shared hosting is probably great. But when it comes to performance issues, especially on like a site where you can't do a lot of caching because people are logged in or everything's dynamic or everything's changing because people are commenting all the time, that's where having a slow server will kill you, basically.
Do you ever see people completely muck up their caching plugin configurations? I mean, those things there's a bajillion options, and if you don't know exactly what you're doing, can you do more harm than good?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, on CSS Tricks, about, I'd say a month ago, he was having intermittent downtime. Chris Coyer was having downtime every 2 hours or so because the caching plugin was clearing stuff too frequently, like clearing stuff that didn't need to be cleared. And it took a while of digging into the settings to see what was going on. Now, of course, there were performance issues with those pages in the first place, but the fact that they were getting wiped out every time basically someone left a comment, the entire cache was getting wiped out. And that's just that if everything has to reload at that point, that's pretty bad. On a site like CSS Tricks where you have a few comments an hour at the slow times,
Wow. Okay. Yeah, he's had an interesting year with his website. His hack. I don't know if you remember that. I maybe that was even last year, but he did his site was hacked, and not for malicious purposes, but more of just I could. And he ended up doing an interview with this guy that it was fascinating.
I missed that.
So go look through the archives of the Shop Talk plugins. Shop Talk archives if you want to see that one. But we have a question from Jeff Richards, longtime listener, first time tweeter. I'm just kidding. I don't know if he's listened for a long time or not, but he asked, can brute force attacks that are getting blocked but still hitting the server slow down your site?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a brute. So, I mean, that's happening in that case is requests are getting fired off and processed and then rejected, basically. I'm assuming that a brute force is going to be on like a login. And I don't think the WordPress login page is particularly non-performant. I think it's probably okay. If you were to but that's essentially what a denial of service attack is, right? Is they're going to hit a slow performing page and crush your server that way. So a brute force could do that. But if someone wanted to slow down your site, they would go after other stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting us just kind of pick your brain. It's interesting, really interesting stuff. let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the business side of WordPress. I mean, here you are, you're freelancing. You've got your company that's focused on a very niche service. What do you, I mean, what do you think the landscape looks like right now for people that want to get into business either with WordPress products or services?
I think it's looking very good. And in fact, today I published a post called "The Future of WordPress Consulting is Paved with Money." I think that was a title that I went with. But
it's a fantastic title.
I think the outlook is really good for WordPress for a few reasons. Freelancing in general, first of all, I think is the future of work for developers. I mean, there are people who won't like the sales and marketing aspect of freelancing, but if you're comfortable with that at all, maybe I'm very biased, but I just can't see why you wouldn't want to go down, investigate that route a little bit, because like, you know, I've worked in an office and stuff, and I've played the game of, you know, you came in at 8 o'clock so you can leave no earlier than 5 o'clock type dance that people do, you know, that type of a thing. So I just think that the future is bright for freelancing. But then in WordPress, it's really interesting. WordPress is like everywhere. It's still growing. It still has Automatic and WordPress in general still has a focus on growth and reaching more people. At the same time, developers are bailing on WordPress, and developers, like the larger developer community, as evidenced by that Stack Overflow survey that came out recently, they dread WordPress. It's like scary and ugly, and they don't want to even be involved in it. And I've seen that firsthand. Like developers who are really good at PHP, which is by itself scary and ugly already, no one likes that, but they're PHP developers, and then they see WordPress, and like the first thing that they say is, can we rewrite this? Like, why are we building this on WordPress? And even when it makes a lot of sense to build it on WordPress. So for whatever reason, they're flocking away from WordPress. So I mean,
do you think that is that people from outside the or programmers from outside the WordPress world have that impression of WordPress?
Because they don't want to take the time to understand it. They'll open up like some crazy old function in the WordPress database. I'm thinking of, there's a function DB Delta, I think is what it is. And it's basically, you can use it to update a table in the database. And it does all this like magic for you. And they'll open something up like that, and it's not well commented, and it's kind of confusing and ugly because it's probably been there forever and ever. And the first reaction is like, I can't believe this is total garbage. Everything's going to blow up when I use this. And I don't blame them, but when you get into WordPress and what its goal is, which is really focused on end users, people using it, which means that there's backwards compatibility to like 2001 or whatever it is that in the code, you start to understand, okay, that's why we don't just uproot these things and move on to the next thing, because there's people that might be running code that relies on this. And it's a trade-off, because a lot of developer tools like Rails, for example, are built for developers, and they'll like every version is like a complete upgrade process, and nothing is backwards compatible. Because it's mainly technical people dealing with it. So if you compare those two without understanding their mission, it's like WordPress looks like crap to a developer.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's why people run away, and it's dreaded. It's like the number 3 most dreaded technology behind MATLAB and Salesforce or something like that.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So you're saying that because there are a lot of developers out there that don't want to work with the platform, that creates opportunity in the market for people who do want to work in WordPress, that there's work available? Is that what
Absolutely.
You're saying?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be miserable work if you understand what WordPress is doing and understand that there are some warts that you have to deal with. Like there's no easy way to handle N+1 queries that I know of, like that. That's just something that you have to deal with as it comes. I think those tools will come in the future. but generally WordPress is like a very pleasant piece of software for end users. People rag on it, like they'll go to some minimalist blogging thing, and
WordPress is pleasant software. That's quote of the day right there.
it is. It's, you know, I really appreciated in your description of me on this episode as solid. I like that word because that's kind of what I'm trying to be. But I feel like that is a perfect word for WordPress because it's solid. It covers all the bases of somebody who needs to use it for what it's meant to use for. And it covers them sufficiently so that any competitors are always going to run into some wall. Like there's not enough extensibility, or it's too difficult to use. Those things, WordPress like walks the line perfectly in between all these constraints, and it's solid. So yeah.
Sweet and solid. And
pleasant.
I have another question from Devender. He's asking, what is your client classification? Or who is your target client? Are they bigger businesses or small bloggers, or?
Probably not small bloggers. I'm still figuring it out, but I estimate that the ideal client for me is making at least $10,000 a month from their WordPress site. So, I mean, then you're looking at $120,000 a year in revenue. And with a speed up on a slow site, I can all but guarantee that you're going to get a 3% increase in conversions. So that makes my price range, which is like in the low thousands for a site speed up and investigation, a no-brainer because it should make up the money in the first year. So I'm thinking somewhere in that revenue range is where I'm targeting.
I love that they're hard numbers to deal with because, I mean, in so much of what I do and sites that I work on, the goals are less tangible. You can't say increased by 3%, or, I mean, certainly you can put some metrics in place, but generally speaking, when you're dealing with cash or time, speed, you know, those are all very measurable. So I'm a little bit jealous.
That's why I latched onto it like crazy, because it just dawned on me. It appeals to my programmer brain that just if A and B, then C, you know, results.
I like it. Well, I'll say, so I totally agree with you that there's space in the WordPress world for additional freelancers or really anyone who wants to enter into the space, whether it's as a freelancer or an agency or some other classifications. But I would disagree. Freelancing is not right for everybody. So there are some people that, even though they may not love the 8-to-5 grind, they like the security of knowing that they're going to have a paycheck every other week or whatnot. And plus, freelancing takes a certain skill set all on its own. I mean, you've got to be able to manage your time, manage your books, and there's so much involved. I don't know. I wonder if, going back to I like what you said earlier. I didn't like. Well, anyways, I like that you said that most freelancers that they drop off within the first 18 months of business, and I wonder if that is because they're not. Are they not cut out to be freelancers, or do they not have the tools to get up to speed and succeed? No, I don't know. It's kind of a rhetorical question.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer because I only have my limited experience, and there are definitely personality types that need the security. I think that there are a sizable number of them who simply don't stumble upon the right resources. Because if I hadn't found certain resources like Brennan Dunn or Curtis McHale or Tom McFarlane early on, I might have gotten stuck in the rut. Because my idea of freelancing was, when I first started, one of my old programmer friends, whom I respect, but he probably isn't good at business, he told me, well, you can never charge anybody more than $75 an hour. That's it. And especially if you like them, you can never charge them more than 50. And that was kind of stuck in my head until I encountered people who weren't doing that. And you know, everything changed because I had the right people to read. So I think freelance development might still be sort of a blossoming industry, a blossoming field. So that those resources are getting out there more and more, and maybe people will stumble upon them more and then stop getting stuck in the rut of like Odesk, Elance, like craptastic projects that suck your soul away. You know, those types of things will be in the past, hopefully.
All right. So I like that. So there is a you have a wonderful way with words. Blossoming space for people who can teach others to freelance, or help provide those resources, or maybe it's even in the form of mentors. I don't know. There's some interesting possibilities there.
Mm-hmm.
A sidebar for just a second. So last week, about this time on the podcast, the Star Wars video or preview was released. So half my audience immediately dropped like flies to go watch, and can't blame them, Star Wars, to go watch this trailer. So it's kind of funny. Well, this week, I just saw the tweet that WordPress 4.2 has officially been released. So, I don't know. I'm something about big announcements happening when the podcast is on the air. I'm not sure what to make of that. So I'll be curious to see what happens next week. All right, Andy, let's pick some winners for these plugins and course. All right. First up, we have, well, you know what? I'll tell you how I'm going to do this. I'm going to pick the winners, but I'm not going to say which software you're paired with, because I want to talk to the winners and find out which one, and try to pair you with the one that's most appropriate for your scenario. So Tanya, you are a winner chicken dinner, and Tanya, I don't know your last name, but I have seen you on Twitter. Thanks for the clap. Yeah. We have another winner, and I'm going to botch this name, so just sorry in advance. Boel Stoddard, Mr. or Mrs. Stoddard, because I don't know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for just calling you a dude if you're a lady, and I'm sorry for mistaking you for a woman if in fact you're a man. But Boel, the good news is you are a winner. So, all right. We also have Dustin Lear. So congratulations, Dustin. We have Christoph Her. This is, okay, what would be terrible is if I was the person at college graduations announcing names as people walked by on the stage. I would just ruin everybody's. Okay, and on that note, we have one last winner for this round of giveaways, and that is Angelica Partridge. So congratulations to you, Angelica. I'll be in touch with each of you guys to notify you and hook you up with your prize. And thanks again to Daniel and Jonathan and Russell and Matt for providing the giveaways. So that's super duper cool. All right, so going back to our regularly scheduled program. I don't know, did we cover all the bases that we needed to cover on the freelancer business opportunity wagon, or was there something else on your mind?
Not a whole lot. I think I've kind of linked WordPress. It's kind of like Java, the programming language, in that it's like everywhere, and a lot of people love to hate it. But the difference between WordPress and Java is that WordPress has like a forward-thinking group of core developers who are in touch with like user experience and things like that, and they're driving the project forward with an eye on backwards compatibility. And I mean, right now, I bet it's a good time to be a Java developer because it's like everywhere, right? And especially in enterprise-y stuff. And then you have guys like Chris Lema who are pushing WordPress into the enterprise area too. I mean, boy, it's going to be everywhere. And WordPress is way cooler than Java by a long shot.
I mean, WordPress is, I think the goal is to run like 100% of the web. So
yeah, exactly.
Matt feels fairly strongly about, continuing to, wanting to get a bigger slice of that pie in terms of number of sites powered by WordPress and percentage of the web. So very true that there's a lot of manpower behind the project, and that's not going away anytime soon.
And I did mention that in my article that, in 2007, if you had told me Matt Mullenweg thinks that WordPress will power 20% of the internet in 8 years, I'd have been like, yeah, right. Like, it's going to peter out here. But now if he says, 50% or whatever, 100%, you have to give him the benefit of the doubt that we're going to probably get close to that number. I mean, he has a track record of driving it forward, and he has the right people like working on it. So I don't see why not. I mean, how is it going to, someone, Tiago mentioned on Twitter, he's in the same boat. He's focusing on WordPress. And I asked him, how could it ever slow down? Like, what scenario are things going to slow down and get worse for WordPress developers? I don't know. It doesn't seem likely to me.
Well, all right. You heard it here on Office Hours. Some predictions for the future of WordPress freelancing. It's blossoming. That is going to be our takeaway, Andy. Mm-hmm. It's blossoming. Okay, I want to go back to picking your brain about site speed and really just get some free consulting out of you while I've got you on the show.
Sure.
What would be some tips that our listeners could take away, like just easy little tweaks or things that they could do? Do you have anything to offer up on ways that we can increase our site speed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Consolidate your CSS and JavaScript. There's various ways to do that, but the easiest is install a plugin that does it. I've used a couple, and I couldn't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but just something that concatenates and serves up all of your JavaScript and CSS as one file each will reduce the requests on the majority of sites by like 50. It's crazy because what happens is WordPress plugins, as they enqueue up scripts, they enqueue everything that they need, and then now you have a list of 40 dependencies that all get loaded up with various points in the page load. So that's a major thing that you can do. What else can you do? This might be a little bit too custom. I don't know if this is easy per se, but a major performance issue I've seen on sites is option overload. Like, plugins and themes store a lot of stuff in the options table. And then as on every single page load, they grab all of their options, and each one is a call to get option. And each call to get option does another database query, so that you could easily start each page off with 50 database queries, just loading up the options for everything. So similar to our n+1 queries problem, you can write something or do something to load up all those options ahead of time. I'm sure that there's plugins that do it too. That's another trick.
All right, you're 2 for 3. I want to squeeze 3 out of you.
One more. Okay. Enqueue your JavaScripts for the footer. Like, there's an extra parameter to WP enqueue scripts that allows you to put it in the footer instead of the header, because JavaScript is blocking, right? So a page will stop loading if there's a script to load. And in particular, if you're doing what I mentioned about concatenating all of your scripts into one file, you're going to have a pretty decent sized file at that point. Put it in the footer and make your site work with your scripts in the footer. That's like less for performance and more user experience, but that's part of the whole performance equation is so that they see the site loaded up and the JavaScript doesn't block it anyways, because everything could be downloading in like 50 milliseconds, but they don't see it until that script is loaded. So there's 3.
All right, good stuff. So I really do like the idea of squishing all of those scripts into a single file for loading. That's I learned something new today. I didn't know that there was a plugin that would do that for you. So let's say that you've got um, oh, like in the Genesis framework, for example, under their theme settings, there's a part where you can insert scripts either into the header or footer. So it's inserted in WordPress under with the get header function. And so if you had a script there, say you were loading in a TypeKit JavaScript, or maybe even your Google Analytics script, would, if it's loaded in get header, as far as the load order, would it that plugin still capture it and squish it?
No, those plugins are only going to capture the ones that are enqueued through the WordPress functions, and really they should only capture the scripts that are hosted on your site. External JavaScript can't really be cached on your site because it's controlled by a third party, right? So those ones have to be output on their own. So those will be some additional loads, and they probably should go in the footer unless if that particular snippet needs to be in the header for some reason. There are a few cases like that.
So how do you decide which scripts need to be in the header?
Well, I mean, like third-party scripts will tell you that, and there are some, like, for example, the HTML5 Shiv or Modernizer, the ones that basically give old browsers the ability to act like new browsers. If those aren't loaded up in the head, I believe that you'll run into problems, because then the page will load up and it'll be this janky looking broken site until that script loads, and then it fixes it.
Okay.
So
the ones that have to deal with maybe painting the page or some immediate functionality that the page needs. But like Google Analytics, for example, they lie. They tell you it needs to go in the header, but it doesn't. You can put it in the footer and still collect your analytics. I mean, I don't know, maybe if somebody immediately hops on a click before that script is loaded, it won't trigger a...
Yeah, the only thing I can think of with that is if there's some events that Google Analytics needs to listen to while the page is loading, that can help improve your analytics. But for the majority of people who are just tracking page views and stuff, yeah, it probably doesn't matter. But I think that one loads itself asynchronously anyways. So like that script is executed and then it fires off a query that will eventually load in the actual scripts. So it may not matter too much. That may not slow you down significantly.
Okay, so when you start blogging out all this wonderful knowledge that's related to website performance, are you going to do it over on your personal website, or are you going to start a blog on your business site?
I don't know. What should I do? I really don't know. I imagine everything will just go on the personal site for now, and in the future, everything might consolidate just to my personal site anyways, because I've pretty much given up hope of ever hiring somebody and growing into an agency type thing. I don't desire. I went through this whole payroll dance with a part-time employee, and it was just a nightmare. And I'm okay with hiring freelancers, but it's probably just going to be me, for the future. So
I like that.
What was that?
I liked the gesture, the moi.
Yeah.
Very nice. Cool. Well, I kind of wonder about that myself, and struggled with, where do you blog certain content, or is your personal site just sort of a hodgepodge of everything under the sun? And that's kind of the option I've gone. There's a little bit of everything on my site. I just worried that, at some point you've got, say, your readers that are, they're there for the freelancer content. That's what they've been following you for since the beginning. And, now all of a sudden you're introducing highly technical content and they're like, wow. So I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just, it's a conundrum.
Yeah, that is a problem. The other side of it is, having two personalities. You have your blog, your business blog, and your personal one. And when I was writing my business homepage, I don't know if you have this tendency, but you want to write like, we are performance experts or whatever. But there's no we. It's like me and my wife and kids. There's just me, So why am I pretending like this brand is anything but me? So maybe I should just accept that it is me.
You know, the whole reason that I got the at Office Hours FM Twitter handle was just so I could talk about myself in third person. I'm just kidding. That's not the only reason I got it, but it is kind of nice to be all like, Carrie's got a special guest on the show today. So Carrie is doing the tweeting. Good grief. Okay. We're almost at the end of the show. If you have a last minute question to pop in, we will try to get to it. I do once again want to thank very generous sponsors at managedwp.com for supporting the show and supporting the WordPress community. They actually do a ton for supporting the freelancer community and providing education around that. Also, if you want to save 10% on their services, you can use cdeals.me/managedwp. And then also desktop server. If you head over to serverpress.com, check them out. Andy, you're going to have to they've got their plugin is actually free. There's a paid pro version, but yeah, play around with that. I think you'll like it. All right. So Andy, where can, like if people want to follow up with you, where's the best place to find you on the web, as you are self-admittedly a terrible Twitter user?
Yeah. That's not the place to find me. You can email me. My email is on my website, which is andyadams.org. Or you can contact me. If you just want to say hi, you can contact me through the form on my business website, which is certainlysoftware.com. But I love chatting about freelance stuff, business stuff, and like don't expect a lot of wisdom or anything. Like if you're just starting out, I can probably help you. If you're like trying to make a pivotal business decision of an experienced agency, don't talk to me. Ask someone else.
Don't be so modest, Andy.
No.
I love that you're sharing your experience as you go. That's incredibly valuable to folks, myself included. I would like to thank the listeners. You are the reason that I show up every week for Office Hours FM. If you like the show, head on over to iTunes and subscribe and drop a little friendly review. You don't even have to write anything. You could just click that 5 stars and that would be fantastic. But if you're not digging the show, I would love to hear that feedback as well on how I can make it better. And then if you would like weekly reminders of the podcast in your inbox, I try to be unobtrusive. Head over to officehours.fm/subscribe, and I'll send you one little email every week saying hello. Be sure to tune in. Andy, you did not disappoint. You are awesome. You are solid. A ton of great knowledge to share. So I appreciate you taking the time to come share with the listeners today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, everybody, until next week, have a fantastic weekend. And Andy, I will see you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.